everyone, Kelly here, and today I want to do my March wrap-up. I'll talk about the things I read in March, and March was a little bit of a disappointment for me, not in terms of like rating. I think most things I read were 4 stars, like the majority. I had 1 3-star. So it wasn't about the quality, it was that I hyped up to myself that I was going to read so much middle grade as part of middle grade March, and I had this huge TBR. My cat's down here, so he was scratching and stuff. Yeah, and I just thought I was going to finally read a ton of books, and then I only read 6 things, which isn't like a tiny amount, but a couple of those I had started before March. So really only like started and read 4 things in March. My goodness, he's like attacking my arm. Do you want to come up? Or are you just gonna attack me from below? What do you think? I don't know. So let's go into this. We'll start with my 3-star and then we'll go through my 4 stars because like I said, mostly it's just 4 stars. So my 1 3-star is called Lore of the Wild, Folklore and Wisdom from Nature by Claire Cox-Starkey, illustrated by H. And this one was just a disappointment for me because this is just like an illustrated collection of folklore. And I was really looking forward to it just because I thought it would be kind of fun with all the illustrations. So basically it's just separated into like categories. So we start off like each section starts with like an actual folk tale. This is a Welsh legend. And then they go into like different things. Like this section's about animals, I think. Is that what this one is? Yeah, so just this first section is just animals. So we've got like dogs and cats, and it talks about all different types of folklore, like cats and folklore from Celtic mythology, from British folklore, from Korean mythology, and it just has different sections like that. So farm animals, stuff like that, with lots of illustrations. So it'll have like one story about that topic and then like just little snippets. And I just thought that sounded interesting, except I really just didn't like the writing in this. What is going on, boy? He's got food in his bowl, so I don't know why he's just sitting here meowing at me. But he just really wants attention, I guess. But anyways, yeah, I just didn't think the writing was very good, and I just am surprised that, like, you know, I'm sure this is a big production to do all this with the illustrations and all that, and I just expected the writing to be good, but yeah, I didn't think that the stories, like, I've read a lot of folklore in the last few years as part of like homeschool, and my daughter just really likes folklore and mythology, so we've read a lot of it, like for children, for adults, all that, and this is just was so average to me in the terms of the writing. Yeah, there were times when I was reading and I would be like, I have to reread that sentence because the words just did not seem to flow into a sentence that my brain understood. Like, that's the kind of writing I'm talking about. So it was kind of a disappointment because I just assumed with this like beautiful production that this would have good writing as well. So yeah, I gave it 3 stars because it's not like terrible. The illustrations were bad. I did learn a little bit about different mythology associated with nature, plants and animals, and I think it also had like weather mythology and stuff like that. So I got some stuff out of this, but I won't be keeping this in my collection, which is sad. Well, hopefully he's decided that now that he's up, that he is content. Oh no, you're gonna come back down? Or you just wanna be near me? I don't know. I don't know what's happening right now. But anyways, let's move on to my 4 stars. Everything else was basically 4-star. We'll talk about my middle grade March stuff first. So first I have Song for a Whale by Lynn Kelly. And this is a contemporary middle grade book about this girl who is deaf, and she is for the first time going to a school where she is the only deaf person in the school, and just kind of the struggle she's having with that, not feeling like she's really connecting with the other students, like the teacher's not really understanding, or now he's going to rub up against the tripod. Sorry, I feel like this whole video is being taken over by my cat. But anyways, yeah, and she hears about this whale that sings on a different frequency than other whales, and so doesn't have a pod and kind of just swims alone. And so she feels this like connection to this whale about like communication issues, and she just really wants to go out and help this whale and make a song for the whale that he can understand, and also just like see the whale. That's what she really wants to do. And this was a book that I feel like everybody universally loves. And I gave it 4 stars, but really like my entertainment value, it was probably closer to a 3. But I think it is a well-written book. Like, this is a book that I would like give to my kid if they liked contemporary books. And I would be like, this is a well-written book, a good story, you should read it. But for me, because I don't really love kind of like the school dynamics, I also don't love it when kids like lie to their parents as like the main plot device in a book, and that this book has both of those things. And so in my pure enjoyment, it was probably closer to a 3, but I can see that it had good themes, well written, and most people love it. So don't take my word for it, especially if you do like contemporary middle grade. And then I read a fantasy. I read Snow and Rose by Emily Winfield Martin, and this one has a lot of illustrations in it that I really loved. And this is kind of a very gentle fairy tale. So I think that's good to know going in. This is just kind of a gentle fairy tale, because I think that some of the reviews were complaining about it being very slow paced and not much happening. But I went in really just wanting this cozy vibes from the illustrations, and that helped me really enjoy it and give it 4 stars. It definitely wasn't 5 stars because I agree that the plot doesn't have a lot to it, that it's very obvious early on as an adult where the plot is going and like what the, you know, like end of the story is gonna be. But I liked getting there when I viewed it as just like this folk tale or kind of like fairy tale in the woods. We're following 2 sisters whose dad disappeared, and because he disappeared, they lived in a manor house, and when their dad disappears, it is presumed dead by everybody. They lose the manor house and they have to go live in the woods in this little cabin, and so they meet different people in the woods. And yeah, it's, you know, got a lot of nice quiet themes in it, and I do enjoy it. I did enjoy the like sister relationship, the overall arc of the plot, and the illustrations. So I would try something else by that author. And the last middle grade that I finished was Layla and the Blue Fox by Karen Millwood Hargrave, and this is illustrated by Tom DeFreston, which they're a married couple, and they have done a couple books like this together where she's written the book and he has illustrated. And this one takes place in the Arctic, and so that's why it has this kind of like blue and black color palette the whole time, which I thought was really great for the ambiance of the story. We are following a girl named Layla who, and this turned out great because I had read this for the prompt of animal on the cover for middle grade March, but it turned out that it was also a refugee immigrant story. So I ended up accomplishing more prompts for middle grade than I thought I did, because this covered 2. So Layla is originally from Syria, and her mom and aunt and cousin had fled Syria, and she has been living with her aunt and cousin in England, and her mom is a scientist working in the Arctic. So she's in Norway and kind of like studying the Arctic. And they've been separated for years, you know, since basically they fled Syria. And so she is going to go to Norway to visit her mom for the first time in like, I think 5 years, and get to spend the summer with her up there. And her mom, as part of her studies, is following this fox, this Arctic fox, who's taking this long journey. And her mom's a meteorologist, and it's kind of like part of like learning, like her study about climate change is studying this migration change in this fox, and like, what is it finding for food? What are the habits that are changing as it adapts to climate change? And so we have that story of following the fox. We actually get the viewpoint of the fox as well. Not like it's telling its feelings, it's kind of just like following the fox sometimes. And then we are seeing Layla dealing with a lot of like emotions of from back when they fled, like some of those things that she has from being a refugee that she has kind of like hidden away because she doesn't want to like think about it. But then also it's because her mom, like she hasn't been, the relationship between her mom is very strained, and that is what is bringing up all these like past emotions, and also just like dealing with like what's going on with me and my mom, why did she leave me, and all that stuff. So I thought this was a really lovely story. It was emotional. I liked the Arctic setting. We get a lot of that. They actually go out and like ski and walk on the like Arctic ice and all that. So I enjoyed this one. I would recommend it, but I would definitely recommend it in the illustrated version. They have like just a regular version that doesn't have the illustrations, but I would recommend the illustrated version. And then I just had 2 other books that were not part of Middle Grade March. One I already had to return to the library, and that is No One Can Know by Kate Alice Marshall. Hopefully I remember that title right. And I had really enjoyed What Lies in the Woods. I think I read it, was that last year that one came out? And really liked it. And so I had high expectations. And I still really like Kate Alice Marshall's writing. I feel like it's very like readable. When I pick up one of her like thrillers, I just want to like read. I didn't love this one as much as that one in terms of the plot, but I did find it entertaining and fast-paced, and to the point of like, I just feel like her writing is really easy to consume. This is following 3 sisters, but we're mainly following one, who she and her husband have come on hard times and they don't have a place to live. And so he's like, why don't we live in the house that you inherited from your parents that has been sitting there for the last 10 years, nobody living in it. And the reason is because her parents were murdered in that house. And so her and her sisters have not lived there since the murder. And so she, begrudgingly agrees because they have nowhere else to go. And so they're moving back in, and it's bringing up all these things about, because the murder was never solved. And she was one of the main suspects back when the murder happened. And so she's trying to put together what actually happened that night. And her sisters, they have been estranged this whole time as well since the murder. And so they're kind of coming back into her life and figuring out what happened. Yeah, so that's kind of the main mystery. Kind of we're solving a cold case of what happened before. And yeah, that's all I can say. I mean, it wasn't a 5-star, it wasn't like a new favorite, but I will continue to read Kate Alice Marshall because I just find the way she writes thrillers to be, it keeps pulling me along. So I was finding it interesting, and I think I read it in like 3 days. And then the last thing that I read was Poison Study by Maria V. Snyder. And this was a reread. I read this as a buddy read with Krista from Books and Jams. And we both liked this one. I originally had given it 5 stars. And I would say this time I would give it 4 stars. And I don't know if that's because I'm rereading it or just like who I am now compared to how I enjoyed books back then. But I still think this is a solid fantasy and still really enjoyed it. We are following a young woman who was in prison. She was about to be killed because she had murdered someone, and then she gets pulled out of there because there's like this agreement that whoever is the poison, like the food taster for the leader of this country, he's called the commander. That person, the food taster, is always, that job is given to the next person to be executed. So she's the next person that's going to be executed. So she gets offered this job, which basically she could die at any moment if somebody tries to poison the commander and she eats their poison food. But, so she trains and like recognizing all these poisons. And like, we just learn more about her history and how she, came to be someone who had murdered her, I guess like her caregiver. I don't know. She murdered she lived in this man's manor house, and that's who she murdered. No, wait, she murdered his son. Sorry, I don't know. Yeah, so like kind of figured out how that happened, and we're just following her, learning about all these poisons. I found that really interesting, this whole like world of like learning about the poisons, learning about all the political things that would lead to somebody like poisoning the commander. How the commander is in charge because it was like a whole revolution, like he killed the whole monarchy and took over this country. And so I liked a lot of the political things. I really like our main character, Yelena, and kind of following her growth throughout the story. And so I really enjoyed it, and I want to continue my reread of the series, because the reason I'm rereading the series, I had read the trilogy, but the author has since added like 6 books to the series. I don't know if they still have this main character or if they're just in the same world, but I wanted to reread this trilogy because it's been years since I read this, like way back when it came out. which is like almost 10 years ago, maybe. I think it came out in the early 2000s, 2005. So I read it probably around that time. So I'm rereading the series so that I can continue into that stuff that she wrote later on. So yeah, I enjoyed it. I think it's a solid fantasy. I just don't know that it's a 5-star for me now, like an absolute favorite, but still a very solid book, and I enjoyed it. So that's it. Those are all the things that I read in March. For the most part, I liked everything I read. I just didn't have any new favorites. I would really love if I could have like some 5 stars. I feel like this whole year I have not had very many 5 stars. I think I have a plan for that in the future, not for April because I'm already have a plan for April, but I think in May my plan might end up being to just read 5-star predictions and try to get some 5-star reads in there. And yeah, because I feel like I just haven't had like new favorites lately. And so that's it for me. If you'd like to talk about any of these books, you can comment down below. I would love to hear from you, and I will see you next time. Bye.